Today, we are going to be talking about your law school personal statement. We are going to be talking about personal statements a lot. Why? Because it's June. Hello, June. Which means that we are officially in the beginning of the law school application cycle, right? You're like, applications open in September. Yeah, okay, but you have to get ready, right? So we're getting ready. Now is the month to get ready. Joining me today, I am so incredibly excited because I have Monique Atkinson, who is a former Harvard Law School admissions officer. And not just is Monique a former Harvard Law School admissions officer, which means that, y'all, she was reading your applications, all right? She was reading people's applications. She was letting people in. What I love about Monique is that she has joined the Montgomery Consulting team full time. So I'm going to read her bio. I'm going to bring her on. You're going to meet her. We're going to rock and roll. Monique does both private consulting and she leads our law school application boot camps. You're going to hear me talk about boot camps at the end. Monique earned her Bachelor of Science in Journalism and her Master's in Education in Educational Leadership at Boston University. Before joining our team, I love saying that, she spent 3 years as an admissions officer at Harvard Law School, where she had the privilege of evaluating hundreds of law school applications and providing insight into the admissions process to prospective students. She also spent several years as an academic administrator at Boston University while completing her graduate studies. When she is not at work, she can be found reading nonfiction in a local coffee shop. Y'all, this girl loves coffee, making friends with neighborhood corgis, engaging in discourse, or volunteering with college access organizations. So without further ado, I am so excited to bring on Monique. Monique, hello.
Hi! Thank you so much, Sydney, for that beautiful and warm introduction. You were the coolest.
You are the coolest. I'm just so thrilled that you're here. I'm thrilled that you're here and you've joined our team full time, especially because, we have a lot in common. We're both Jamaican. We're both, Black women under 30. We're both trying to get more Black women, brown women, all other kinds of women, men, non-gender, binary, all the people. We're trying to get all the people, all the genders, all the expressions, all the minoritized folk, all the non-minoritized folk. I see you. We're trying to get all of y'all into law school, right? So Monique, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, I think you covered it really well, Sydney. Folks, I'm Monique. I have always been. I think Sydney gave the high level overview. I've always been really passionate about a couple things in this life, but two of them are just like in any way that I can supporting folks who have been historically marginalized, trying to be a part of, and that's a big category. That's a lot of folks, and so I kind of combine that with my other passion, which is education writ large, educational equity, figuring out ways that I can support folks as they access and move through education so that they can reach their goals and do cool things and make the world better and make the world more vibrant, and bring their perspective to the world. What are the ways that I can be a part of that and support that? My work at Harvard Law School allowed me to connect with so many folks, to demystify a process and a place that is often mystical, right? That's a place that folks don't necessarily immediately see themselves for a variety of reasons. And I got to be a part of making folks feel comfortable, considering applying and moving through that application process. And many folks, many folks that I got to connect with. It was a privilege to read their applications, and it was a privilege to kind of get to see folks go from applicants to admitted students, as a member of the team. So that's me. I do love a corgi. They're my favorite dog, and I drink more coffee than the average individual, which my doctor is not a fan of. But we do what we can. Yeah,
I
that's
love
me.
that. Tell me, so you are a dynamic person. I can't say enough good things about you. It's not just because you now work for our team, but you are, in your own right, an amazing individual. What made you go into admissions? You could have done so much with your degrees. You have a master's degree in education. I mean, talk to me about your path. Why admissions?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of answers when I like kind of think about the ways, like in a personal statement, what are the significant sort of touchstones here? What do I need to know about this? I think that as I mentioned, this passion for education brought me to study how education leadership specifically, that was what my, and policy was my master degree. And I thought about how am I going to apply that to the work of, right, actually the lived experience of students. How am I going to connect with students? I didn't want to do work in policy, or work where I was kind of separate from, the actual day to day of students' lives. And so I wanted to learn as much about the processes that not only brought students to institutions, but that sort of the many siloed parts of higher education. And I knew that that first kind of step for folks was the admissions piece of how do students get admitted to a law school, to a graduate school, to an undergraduate institution. And I've gained a lot of insight into the things that are important, the things that people have misconceptions about, just how those processes work, and being able to understand, sort of, right, I think you can't change things or impact things until you understand how they work, the good and the bad. And so, or the good, the different, clearing up those misconceptions. And so admissions allowed me to get a sense for how it all worked and also how to best support students as they try to figure out how it works, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That does make a lot of sense. So today we're talking about personal statements, which is my favorite topic and also your favorite topic. We love helping students do personal statements. There are a lot of people who have questions and struggle about personal statements. Before we dive into all the nitty gritties, the good, the bad, the ugly of personal statements, could you just tell people a little bit about your role here at S. Montgomery Consulting? What do you do? How can they work with you? What are the different ways you work with people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned earlier, I am an associate law school consultant, and what that means, is that I have the distinct privilege of working with students sort of throughout and in different ways throughout their law school application process. One way is through private consulting, so students can work directly with me, and are able to sort of craft all the parts of their application with support and guidance, and having someone who's in their corner to support them and to kind of like, I don't know how to do this. I am unsure how to put together a law school resume. I have no idea where to start with my personal statement. Having someone there to kind of guide and give instruction and also sort of support the development of those pieces as you work on them. And all of the tiny pieces that go with that, because there are a lot of components to a law school application. And so having my insight, is a part of that, private consulting. And then I also have the opportunity to work with students in more of a community setting. We call them boot camps, and sort of work with a cohort of students to, do that very similar work of going through how do we craft a personal statement. Let's go week by week, and sort of go step by step, having that guidance, and then also being able to support one another in that process. So facilitating and sort of leading that process as well. Yeah, I'm here to be an advisor, a support, someone who knows the process, who can help you to navigate it and make it a little bit less scary, is hopefully, the center of my role.
Absolutely. And you are such a warm person. So I just have a question though. If I'm sitting here and I'm like, but Monique, you were at Harvard Law School and my life is a hot mess. My life is a hot mess. I don't know where to start. I don't know if I want to go to law school. I don't know what law school. I don't know anything about law school. I couldn't possibly work with you because my life's a hot mess and you are so accomplished. What do you say to that? Like the person that's just like, I don't know if I can do that.
That's a beautiful question. I'm gonna be real. Life is messy. So if you're like, I don't know, I think when folks say their life isn't messy, I love that for you. But I have questions. So, like, are we being honest with ourselves? And I think that there is a lot, like, life is messy, and also life is layered, and we are layered. And when I met Sydney, I was like, Sydney, I couldn't possibly, like, you're you. That's exactly what I said to Sydney Montgomery. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty cool, I'm fine, but like, you're Sydney Montgomery. Like, you must be mistaken. The imposter syndrome is out here. It's roaming the streets. Like, and it's just how it's how I felt. Even though I have done some cool things and I do have insights, and I think that I am here for you, and I also know what it feels like to be like, I don't even know where to start with this. Like, am I wasting this individual's time or that? Like, no, you're worth it. Like, what do you mean? Like, you are worth the time, you are worth the energy. And I think that about most humans, because you are. And if you go away with anything after like speaking with me ever, it's that you're worth the time and investment in yourself, but also folks are excited to invest in you. And if you aren't surrounded by folks who are willing to invest in you and support you, then we need to find you new folks. So that's just not how and also I will say, working at Harvard Law School was a privilege and an honor and a really, really cool opportunity. But I also know what it was like to stand outside of Harvard Law School when I had first got hired. I'm a first generation American. My family immigrated here. Like, what am I doing on this campus? And realizing that I do have a place there. So I just really want you to know that I get that feeling, and that is not how sharing space with me or with our team. I wouldn't be on this team if it was not here for you, and it is 150% here for you.
Love that. Well, thank you. So I just love that. I love that just notion about you are worthy and you're worth it no matter who you are and your background and your circumstances. I think that that's just a really powerful message. And that is a message that we also hope to convey through our personal statements, right? We want admissions to read our personal statements and then also think, hey, you're worth it, you're worthy. So tell me, like, let's just start from the beginning with the personal statements, right? From your experience as an admissions officer, why do personal statements exist? What's their function and role? And I ask this because I think oftentimes students, they don't really think about, like, why am I writing a personal statement? They're just writing. And I think if you miss the purpose in what you're writing your personal statement for, if you don't have a motivating why, and not just a why law, which is a very large component of something I believe that you should have, but even why am I going through the exercise of writing a personal statement, but also why are they asking me for a personal statement, right? We never really think about the other side. So why are they asking me for a personal statement? Can you talk to us about the role and function of that in the application process?
Absolutely. The personal statement is one of my favorite parts, or as an admissions officer, one of my favorite parts. You will hear that a lot. We love. I mean, I don't want to speak for every individual who works in admissions, but it is a privilege to read all personal statements, good personal statements, especially. Um, I think that the way that I would crystallize it is, and sort of the high level is, it is the one of the only places in the application where you get to talk directly to me, right? You get to tell me, right? And so that space is important. It is how you're going to share your voice. Just like thinking about the other parts of the application, I can interpret and put together, but you get to guide how your personal statement moves. And so there's significance there. It's like, what does this person need to say to me that no one else can say, that nothing else in their application can communicate? And how are they going to do it? Those are really wonderful and important. And also, our voices are some of the most, right, like advocacy, our voice, important. So that's how I see the personal statement. It's like they have a soapbox. How are they going to use it? And also, it is an opportunity for me to have the questions, that I have the sort of insights on why is this yeah, right, why are you doing this? Like, I know about you now, right? I read your resume, I get a sense for where you've been. I have, I've seen what other folks have to say about you now. Like, what brings you here, what brought you here, and why is this the right next step for you? Theoretically, a really great place for that is just in your own words, and in the way that you want to tell me. And so the personal statement really helps to clear up that why, in some capacities, or that motivation, for some. Maybe if you want to kind of view it in another way. Yeah, those are a couple of my thoughts.
And what are some of the misconceptions or myths that maybe people have about personal statements? Because I know there are a multitude of ways of writing a strong personal statement. Here, we really do believe that maybe the safest, I'm like very risk averse as a person, so maybe the safest thing is to make sure that your personal statement, as you said, answers why law school is the next logical step for you in your career, with why law, why now, and even bonus points, do you have an area of law that you're interested in? I love to see focus, right? I read an article at some point last year that talked about the focus and the planning that is needed as a lawyer. If you can show that through your personal statement, that's, also even better, because it shows, how you operate through the world and how you will be as a law student and a future attorney. But what are some misconceptions or myths about personal statements that you think would be good to kind of debunk a little bit?
Yeah. I think the idea that your personal statement has to be, first of all, there's one right personal statement, right? Like there are like three things I need you to say, like specifically, like or like a specific area of law you need to mention, or there's something that'll stand out to me in terms of content. It really is an exercise in like being yourself and being honest. So some people will be I need to write the way or write specifically these things for an admissions officer. And I think that specifically because it's in your voice, when someone's being inauthentic in their personal statement, admissions officers can generally tell. And so that sticks out right away because it creates more questions than it answers. Of like, well, I saw in your resume that you like were really, really excited about media and design, but you're saying here that you want to do environmental law, and I'm not entirely sure why. Right, and so this idea of right, like I'm gathering intel the whole time I'm reading this application. I'm getting a sense of who you are, and then if that doesn't necessarily align with what I'm seeing in the personal statement, even though if it's like really well written, I have questions. And so that's one thing of like I would be really thoughtful about what ways like don't just say what you think that the admissions officer wants to hear. Really, like, what do you want to do? And that can be compelling as well. I think that another misconception or sort of like a missed opportunity is that that we can't tell when things are like when people try to fudge the directions. That's a big thing. So read the directions, really, really important. Every law school has not every law school. There are lots of different sets of directions, and that is like really, really important. Some folks are like, oh, like if I write 3 pages, they won't mind if it's a 2-page personal statement limit, or my font's going to be like 14 points when it should be 11, or that is like it's such a big like that's something that might seem really obvious, but it's a really big deal because right, following instructions is a big part of school, but it's also right attention to detail. It's also right you might have a really strong story, but if my attention is on the fact that you tried to get away with like a 1/4 inch margins, I'm not paying attention to your story. And so like the idea that you can get away with that, I wouldn't try it, because even if right you have an exceptional application, I think it can detract in ways that it doesn't need to.
I think those are really good. What thinking of like things that detract or maybe take away, what are some of the worst personal statement examples? How can we learn what not to do that you can remember from your time reading files at HLS?
There are some personal statements that definitely that miss the goal. Yeah, I think that some personal statements that don't land are I don't learn a lot about them. Like that's really hard. When they have spent their personal statement writing about someone who is really important to them, who is wonderful, and I love the person. By the end of it, I really like, oh my god, this person is so wonderful. I like so like an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother, and that's amazing. And I would just maybe give grandma a sentence. And she deserves the world, but like I'm not admitting her to law school, and so that's one that you see a lot is that folks have folks who are really inspiring to them. Like if I could write a book about my mother, I absolutely would. But in terms of your law school application, when you kind of focus your attention on that individual, you're like losing time and space to kind of shift the narrative into who am I because of that? Like what did that do for me, and how am I going to carry that legacy forward? You don't have enough time for that when you kind of focus it on the successes or the hardships of someone who's really meaningful to you. They should stay really meaningful to you, but maybe somewhere else. And I think another sort of hard part is when we don't get enough context. So someone shares with us, I've always been really passionate about environmental law. I'm really, really excited about the opportunity to study law, but they don't talk about sort of the touch points or the moments that kind of led up to that. And so I'm like, I don't really know why you want to do that. Or I don't know why law school makes sense for that. Like why you're motivated towards environmental law. I get why you love the environment. But maybe like what is driving you towards this step? Because I think that motivation in the work of admissions is that we don't get to see you after you are admitted in the same way. Like we get to see you on campus. You're like, oh hi, and we're really excited for you. But the idea of like, after you are admitted and move forward into your law school education, like is this where you're going to want to be? Are you going to be really excited in the legal coursework? Are you going to enjoy practicing to become a lawyer? If I'm not entirely sure if like those are things that excite you, or if you like might want to get a master's in environmental policy, that's another one.
I think what I really like about it is it touches on two things that I always tell students. One is center yourself, right? I say, when we're talking about centering yourself in your personal statement, I usually say don't center someone else, as you talked about, right? And don't center your trauma, as that often happens with first gen and minoritized students. Don't center a topic or an issue. Like, I don't need a whole page about why or the nuances of abortion rights. You can be and want to be a reproductive rights justice warrior, but you don't also need to be explaining the issue to me in a whole page where I could be learning about yourself. That kind of touched on what you also said is oftentimes when you do center someone else, when you center a trauma, when you center an issue, what ends up happening is because you have a limited amount of real estate, you don't spend as much time talking about you. And so at the end, I may have learned a lot more about Roe v. Wade than I knew before, but I learned very little about you as an applicant. And at that point, you still missed the mark. And so I would just echo that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I didn't want to cut off your echo. I love echoes. No, I wanted to share. You just reminded me of one more thing. If an admissions office is generally doing their job, they're reading your whole application. They're giving it a, right. They're giving it a thorough review. Please don't spend time resharing the things that I've gathered in other places, because it is also, like you were mentioning, you've got 2-3 pages depending on the institution. I will be really disappointed. This is like a huge missed opportunity. I will be disappointed in you if you're like, in 12th grade I did this, my friend. And sure, you can speak about and speak on the accomplishments you've made, but tell me something more. Like,
Yeah.
how did that feel? What did that do to your perspective? I love that. Awesome. But like an entire recitation in narrative of your resume is not helpful. You will probably hear that from folks, because it's like, I read that document, I got it, and I was excited about it, but now I leave the application having read 2 resumes.
Yeah.
So
Which is sad because then your emotions at the end of reading it is like disappointment. And that is the emotion you'll remember about the applicant, not the excitement that you started off when you read the resume for the first time and the only time you should have read it.
Absolutely. It's one part of a larger picture. You contain multitudes, folks. Right? You do, and you deserve to tell your story in different ways. And no admissions officer is ever going to know you as well as the people in the world who know you, right? Your community. We get, or an admissions officer, I don't do that anymore. Admissions officers or admissions folks get 20-30 pages with you, maybe, give or take, right? They get 3 pages of your own words. They're not going to know all of you, but what ways can you use different parts of your application to share different sides of yourself? I think that's helpful.
Absolutely. So, in trying to tackle that big task, right? Using your own words to share who you are, talk to me about the importance of planning and preparation. One, how important is it? Two, how do we plan and prepare for this task?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of ways to start this journey. I'm a thinker and a talker, and so there, like, we're gonna get to logistical steps. But you want to go to law school? Maybe you've been thinking about it for a week. Maybe you've been thinking about it for 6 months. I want you to sit. I want you to think on it. Like, why do I want to do this? No, but I think that the idea of reflection, and like, no one's going to be able to tell you why you want to be a lawyer. I think that question is really important, and you should reflect on it throughout your process. But like, talk to you, like, sit down with you, have a cup of tea. Maybe you're a journaler. Sydney and I were talking about journaling earlier today. Like, how talk to your family, talk to people in your life, do some work. And this can be short term, it can be long term, and like, get your why, like, think about it. And then, so that, because that's going to, right, like, you can't come back to that. I mean, you can come back to it later. You can always come back to it. But right, like, that is going to be important for the whole application. I want you to weave that through. When you get that why, like, where does that show up? And so I think after you've done the like internal work, I mean, like, I actually want to do this, then you can communicate that. Like, we can't communicate what we don't know necessarily. And some of you may have been thinking about this your whole life, and so you're like, check. And for folks who have not, and just really want to be able to crystallize that, I think that's a good step. And I also think that after that, A really important step is I know that just jumping into writing a personal statement or an essay or a paper, it's like, what do you want me to say? What should I say? Here are all the things that have ever happened to me. How do you know what we do? We outline. Is that you take the time to sit down and set out what are the things I need to say, what are the pieces of myself of information that I think are incredibly relevant to this and incredibly relevant to me, and parsing all of that out. That's work. It's a lot of work, because you've lived a life. But doing that work of like, what do I need them to know? What do I need to say? What main topics are going to get hit in these 2 pages, which is not very much. And narrowing that down. I think jumping in and just writing out an essay and just refining that is not going to be helpful because there's too much to sift through. And so having a really solid outline will allow you to pull in like those details that will really be meaningful for an admissions officer. But sometimes I read essays that are a lot of like, or I've read essays that are like, I don't see a beginning, middle, or an end. I'm confused. I'm not sure what's happening, even though there's a lot of really beautiful reflection. I'm not sure. Like I know they, like, I know that they didn't know what their point was because I wasn't sure either. So getting sort of that set, and then I think as you plan, as you prep, as you write out, make sure to get feedback. Right, you might write an essay and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I share everything I write with someone, everything. It's weird, but it's important because they give me really good positive and critical feedback, and that's helpful because what's in my head as like really strong, because I'm tied to it. I care so much about what I've written. You go give it to someone and they might say, I don't actually, you did this thing 4 years ago that you just raved about and you didn't mention like anything about those reflections, like that might, and you might be like, oh wow, I should actually like center something there. So people in your life, people who are here to support you in your world, anyone that feels right to like look at it, have at least one person who looks at it, not be someone who loves you, because I think it's harder to give critical feedback to people you love, sometimes. So those are my first reflections on kind of best prep steps.
I love that. And we will have many videos on brainstorming, planning, and preparing your personal statement. I'm going to do a plug for the fact that we have a whole free guide on our website that is basically planning your personal statement. Right? Okay, it doesn't really get more basic than that. You can go right on our website, montgomeryconsulting.com/law-school. Scroll to the bottom. You'll see all our free guides. We have free guides on diversity statement, personal statements. We have a whole 50 plus free guide on the entire application process. But if you're just like, okay, right now I just want to focus on planning my personal statement, there's a free guide just for you that will give you some guidance and some structure on how to start to plan and prepare for your law school personal statement. But we will also have more videos on that, and we can talk you through some of the ways that we have thought to organize your thoughts before you even get to the outline, how outlining is really the key to every strong outline or strong essay. So there's a lot of good things there. I wanted to touch a little bit because like I said, we share a lot of things. I was an English major. I know you love writing and journaling. Can you talk to me about writing style? We've talked about how important it is to be authentic, but also I just wanted to get into a little bit of the nitty gritties. How important is your writing in the personal statement, or is it just content? If the content's there, it's fine.
Oof, absolutely not. I don't speak in absolutes often. We are law school is a professional school, and we can unpack that language. But like in terms of logistics, strong writing, being able to write is an incredibly important part of being a lawyer. That's things you can learn. We can all learn to strengthen our writing. But showing how you write and how you can write well in a professional setting is going to be really important, not only for the admissions officers and admissions team, but often law schools will have faculty as a part of that process in some capacity. And think about turning in a paper, right, to a teacher, or not that it has to be written as a paper, but they're one thing that is being evaluated is your writing throughout this process, in not just your personal statement, but in your resume, right? In terms of content, but also in terms of structure, in terms of grammar. Please, please, please spell check. Please grammar check. Do not let those really small things logistically, like, right? That's your grammar is not the center of your personal statement, but if it's not there, right, it makes it even harder to be like, this is a phenomenal student. They're going to be great. We also want to set you up to succeed. And in law school, right, being success also kind of has some grounding in your academic skill sets, including strong writing. So keep that in mind. It is a professional paper. I will also say I love a journal. I love a blog post. I think writing in such a way and like knowing your audience, and thinking about who your audience is and what their role is can be really helpful in sort of helping you to figure out what the best approach to your writing is. It doesn't mean it has to be the way that you write every day, right? But the fact that you can, in an academic setting for an academic purpose, write in such a way, is helpful.
What are some pieces of advice that you can give to someone who's watching right now who is trying to put together all the pieces of advice that you've given? You've been dropping all kinds of gems, right? Really, just gems dropping. But they're but they're trying to put together the pieces of advice that you have given. Do you have any words for them as they embark on this journey to write their personal statement?
I do. This is going to be, I think it's probably one of the harder parts of the application. It is one of the most meaningful parts of the application. Again, as I said at the top, this is the place where you speak to me or speak to admissions officer. You're telling them something about you in your words. It's very vulnerable, right? To share your voice with someone you can't even, you've never met them, maybe in some capacities. And so, like, honor that. Know that if it feels hard, if this feels confusing, if it doesn't feel easy, you're probably doing it right. If it feels super, super easy, maybe you need to be more critical about at least one thing. Like, take it very seriously, but also like honor that weight. And that what I think can help with that is starting early. Like, I don't want anybody writing their personal statement like the week before it's due. I don't want you writing your personal statement the day before it's due. I want to give yourself time and space. We can tell, and by we, I mean admissions officers. I need to change my language. Admissions officers can tell if you rushed it, and that's not helpful either for a variety of reasons, right? They don't get to sit down next to you, and you kind of walk them through what it would have looked like if you had given it more time. They just get the materials that are in front of them, and so give it time, give it space, and step away from it, come back, think about how you want to weave it into the other ways that you're preparing your law school admissions materials. That can be helpful. Of like, I have to work on this resume, and I have to take the LSAT or the GRE, and I have to get my recommenders. Like, how am I going to weave this personal statement in? Because it's easy to leave it for last, because it is like, it doesn't rely on anyone else, but it is just as, if not more important. I wouldn't say more important. I would say just as important as the other components. Yeah, and I would also say I cannot stress enough those little tiny things, like, because you have a strong personal statement. I want it to stay that way, right? Do not bleed on to the fourth page if you are allotted 3, please. Like, they will read it. It's likely that it'll still get read, but like, will it raise a question about following directions? Do not submit it without doing a grammar check. Do not read it backwards, as a former colleague of mine would say. Read it without context. Just look at if you spelled the word brother correctly or the word sauna. I don't know when that would come up in a personal statement, but yeah, like, make sure you spelled these words right, because I know that you can. Right, the admissions officer might not wonder if you can spell the word home correctly, but they know that means that there was maybe, right, it distracts them. Don't limit those distractions. Yeah, and be kind to yourself as well. That's always my advice for everything. It's okay that it's going to take time and it's going to be hard. Be kind to yourself, and I'm sure it'll turn out great.
Yeah, I love that. I love eliminate distractions. I feel like that should just be a theme for the cycle 2022 to 2023. Eliminating distractions. For your greatness to shine. But also being kind to yourself is so, so, so helpful. Monique, thank you so much. I'm so excited. And, I'm excited also because everyone that's listening also has the opportunity to work with you if they would like to. So guys, I'm excited. I'm excited. Monique, are you excited?
I am nothing but excited.
We are so happy that we got to spend this hour with you. We cannot wait to work with you. We cannot wait to continue. There's going to be more Monique. This is not the only time you're going to see. Listen, Monique might be here without me sometimes, all right? Like,
Get on it. No, no.
no, it'll be great. We're really excited, just for all of the goodness that you're gonna bring to this team. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to work with you on your personal statements, guys. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always find us at hello@montgomeryconsulting.com. If you liked this video, make sure that you hit that like button, you hit that subscribe button, you share it with a friend. If you're listening to the podcast, rate and review. Also share it with a friend. Comment below. Tell us what more you want to hear. Do you want more Monique? Yes or no? The answer is yes. And it's definitely yes. We cannot wait to see you guys next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.